You know, I've played cowboys in movies for most of my career. The man with no name riding through dusty towns with a poncho and a squint. Jose Wales seeking redemption through violence and finding it through community. William Money confronting a past he couldn't escape. These characters became iconic, became part of American mythology. But they were just characters, performances. The real West, the real cowboy culture, that's something different entirely. Something deeper. Something I learned about long before Hollywood, and something I've tried to honor ever since. That's why when I got an invitation to the Fort Worth Stockyards Rodeo Festival last spring, I decided to go. Not as a celebrity, not for an appearance or publicity, just as a man who respects the culture, who wants to see if it's still alive in any real way, or if it's all become performance and nostalgia. I drove myself there, took the long way through Texas, enjoying the landscape, the wide open spaces, the big sky, the sense of horizon stretching forever. There's something about Texas that feels like what America used to be, or what we imagine it used to be. Space to breathe, room to be yourself, a culture that values certain things, honor, toughness, independence, even if those values are sometimes more myth than reality now. The festival was everything you'd expect. Banners and flags, vendor stalls selling everything from handcrafted saddles to mass-produced tourist junk, the smell of barbecue and livestock, country music blasting from speakers, families in their weekend Western wear, kids running around with toy cowboy hats. It was part authentic tradition, part theme park, the way most cultural events are these days. I dressed simply. My old boots, the ones I've had for 30 years, worn leather that's molded to my feet, jeans that have seen better days, a plain Western shirt, nothing fancy, a hat I bought decades ago in Montana, genuine Stetson, sweat-stained and weathered. I looked like what I was, an old man who'd spent time around ranches and horses, not someone trying to make a statement. The main arena was impressive. Professional setup, bleachers filled with spectators, announcer booth, the whole production. I bought a ticket and found a seat, content to watch to see what rodeo had become in 20. The events were traditional: bull riding, barrel racing, calf roping, bronc riding. The riders were skilled, you could see that. This wasn't amateur hour. These were people who trained, who took it seriously, but something felt off. I couldn't quite place it at first. Then I saw him. Young man, probably mid-20s, dressed in what I can only describe as designer Western wear. Everything matched, everything coordinated, everything expensive. Embroidered shirt that probably cost $500. Jeans so perfectly distressed they had to have come that way from the store. Boots that gleamed like they'd never seen a stable. Hat that looked like it had been carefully aged by a stylist. He was with a crew, people with cameras and phones, filming everything, staging shots. He was good looking, that modern way. Styled, groomed, probably spent more time on his hair than I've spent on mine in the last decade. And he was loud, confident, playing to the cameras and the crowd that had gathered around him. I heard people whispering, "That's Dakota Steele, you know, from Instagram. He's got like 3 million followers." Dakota Steele. Even the name sounded manufactured. I watched as he prepared for his event, which was apparently going to be some kind of exhibition ride. His horse was beautiful, I'll give him that. The expensive animal probably cost more than most people make in a year. But I noticed how he handled it, like a prop, like an accessory to his image rather than a partner, a living creature that deserves respect. I was sitting near the fence when he rode past during his warm-up. He saw me, this old man in worn clothes and a weathered hat, and something in his expression changed. Amusement, condescension. He rode over, his camera crew following. "Hey there, old-timer," he said, loud enough for his cameras to pick up. "You look like you walked right out of one of those old westerns. What was it like back in the day when cowboys were real?" There was laughter from his crew. It was meant to be teasing, playful, but there was an edge to it. Mockery disguised as friendliness. "Cowboys are still real," I said evenly. "When they need to be. Oh, come on. It's all show now, man. Instagram, TikTok, brand partnerships. That's the modern cowboy. We keep the aesthetic alive, you know, the vibe, but the actual lifestyle, that's over. Dead. We're just here to look good doing it." "Is that what you think a cowboy is?" I asked, looking good. He laughed. "I think a cowboy is whatever gets the most likes and followers. That's the currency now, old man. Not cattle or land. engagement, reach, influence. And you think that would matter to a real cowboy? I think real cowboys died out 50 years ago. Now we've got people like me keeping the fantasy alive for people who want to pretend it's entertainment. You should understand that. Didn't you make those spaghetti westerns back in the day? Wasn't that all fake too? I looked at him steadily. Those were movies. We never pretended they were anything else. But the values they represented, honor, courage, standing up for what's right, those were real. Or they were supposed to be. He smirked. Sure, Grandpa. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Anyway, stick around. Watch how a modern cowboy does it. He rode off, his crew filming, and I sat there thinking about how far we'd fallen. How something that used to mean something, cowboy culture, Western values, had been reduced to an Instagram aesthetic. A costume, a brand. The exhibition started. Dakota Steele performed tricks, showmanship, the kind of thing that looks impressive to people who don't know horses. Rearing up, quick turns, choreographed movements that were more dance than horsemanship. The crowd loved it. Phones were out, recording, capturing content. He was giving them a show, and then something happened. At the far end of the arena, near the holding pens, I heard shouting. Commotion. A horse had gotten loose, a big stallion spooked by something, and it was panicking, running wild. And in its path was an older man, a rancher by the looks of him, probably in his 70s, moving too slow to get out of the way. People were screaming, security was running, but they were too far away. The horse was powerful, terrified, dangerous. I looked for Dakota Steele. He was closest. He could have helped. But he dismounted, backing away. His crew still filming, but everyone frozen, watching the disaster unfold. I didn't think. I just moved. I was over the fence before I realized what I was doing. Years of riding, of working with horses. It comes back like muscle memory. I ran toward the loose horse, not at it, but angling to intercept. I called out, a sound I learned decades ago, a sound horses respond to when they're trained right. The stallion heard me. Turned. For a moment we locked eyes, and I could see the fear in the animal. It wasn't mean. It was scared. I slowed my approach, hands out, voice low and steady, talking to it the way you talk to a frightened creature that needs to know you're not a threat. The old rancher had fallen, was scrambling to get up. I moved between him and the horse, still talking, still approaching carefully. The horse stamped, snorted, but it was listening. I got close enough to grab the trailing lead rope. Still talking, still calm. I started to lead it away from the crowd, away from the noise, toward the quiet of the holding area. Behind me I could hear the old rancher being helped up, people asking if he was okay. But I focused on the horse, on getting it calm, on treating it with the respect it deserved. When I finally got it secured in a pen, when I was sure it was safe and settling down, I turned around to find a crowd had gathered. Dakota Steele was there, his camera crew filming everything, and his expression was different now, embarrassed, defensive. That was reckless, he said. You could have been killed. Maybe, I said, but that man definitely would have been hurt, and that horse needed help and not an audience. I was about to go help, he protested, but we both knew it was a lie. An older woman pushed through the crowd. She had authority written all over her, boots worn from real work, eyes that had seen things. That was some fine horsemanship, she said to me. Not many people know how to handle a spook stallion like that. You've done this before. Once or twice, I said. She looked at me more carefully, and I saw recognition dawn in her eyes. She knew who I was, but she didn't say anything, just nodded with respect. I'm Margaret Hayes. I run the stockyards here. That was my stallion you just saved, and probably saved old Pete, too. She gestured to the rancher, who was being checked by medical staff, but seemed mostly shaken rather than hurt. I owe you. No debt, I said, just glad everyone's okay. Dakota Steele was still there, still filming, and I could see him calculating. This was content, an old man doing something heroic, good for his brand. Hey, that was amazing, he said, switching to his influencer voice, friendly and loud. You've got to tell me your story. Where'd you learn to handle horses like that? We could do a collab, old school meets new school. It would get huge engagement. No, I said simply. He blinked. What? I'm not interested in being part of your content. This wasn't a show. That was a scared animal and a man who could have been hurt. It's not entertainment. His expression hardened. Everything's content now, old man. You just don't get it because you're from a different era. The West you knew, it's dead. This, he gestured around at the cameras, the crowd, the spectacle. This is what it is now. Margaret Hayes stepped forward. The West isn't dead, son. You just don't know what it looks like. And you do, he challenged. When's the last time you worked a real ranch? When's the last time any of this, he swept his arm across the arena, was about actual cowboy work and not just performing for tourists? Every day, she said quietly. I run a working ranch 30 miles from here, 200 head of cattle. Real work. Not for cameras, for a living. He scoffed. That's not what people want to see. They want the romance, the aesthetic. They want to believe in something that never really existed. It existed, I said. It still does. Just not in the way you're selling it. He turned on me, frustrated now. Who are you to judge? You're just some old guy who probably hasn't been on a horse in decades. At least I'm keeping the culture alive in some form. What are you doing? Margaret Hayes's eyes went wide. She opened her mouth to speak, but I shook my head slightly. You're right, I said. I haven't been on a horse in a while. But when I was, I learned something. Being a cowboy isn't about the hat or the boots or the horse. It's about character. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when it's hard or scary or there's no one watching to give you credit. It's about respecting the animals you work with, the land you work on, the people you work for. It's about being someone your word means something to. That's just romantic nostalgia, he said dismissively. No, Margaret said, that's truth. And the fact that you can't see the difference is exactly the problem. A man in a suit approached one of the festival organizers. Is everything all right here? We have medical, and we need to file an incident report. Everything's fine, Margaret said, thanks to this gentleman. She looked at me. I don't think we've been properly introduced. Clint, I said, offering my hand. Clint Eastwood, she said, shaking it firmly. I know. I've known since you climbed that fence. Not many men your age move like that, and not many men any age handle a spooked horse that well.
Dakota Steele's face went through several expressions rapidly. Confusion, recognition, embarrassment, then calculation.
Wait, you're Clint Eastwood? The actor? Among other things. You made all those westerns, the spaghetti westerns, Unforgiven, all of that. I did. So you, of all people, should understand that it's all performance. It's all show. Cowboys in movies aren't real cowboys. No, I agree. They're not. But they were supposed to represent something real. Something about honor and courage and doing the right thing. They were supposed to inspire people to be better, not give them permission to be shallow. He looked like he wanted to argue, but the crowd that had gathered was listening now, and his brand was built on being likable, relatable. He couldn't afford to look like he was arguing. I'm just trying to make it doing something that matters, I said. There are ranches all over the state that need help. Real work, real cowboys. You could learn something. You could be something more than an aesthetic. Margaret spoke up. I'm always hiring. If you want to learn what cowboy work actually is, come out to my ranch. No cameras, no content, just work. He looked at her like she'd suggested he fly to the moon. I make 6 figures a year with my social media. Why would I give that up to shovel manure on a ranch? Because you might learn who you actually are underneath the costume, she said. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I know who I am. I'm Dakota Steele. I've built a brand. I've got millions of followers. I've got sponsorships. That's real success. Is it? I asked. When that horse was loose, when someone was in danger, where was Dakota Steele? What did all those followers matter then? His face flushed. That wasn't my responsibility. Being a decent human being is everyone's responsibility. The crowd was getting larger, and some people had recognized me now. There were phones out, recording this conversation, and I could see Dakota Steele realizing that this could go badly for him, old cowboy movie star, calling out young influencer cowboy for being shallow and cowardly, not good for the brand. I think we got off on the wrong foot, he said, switching to damage control mode. You're absolutely right. I should have helped. I froze. That's on me. And I'd love to learn from you, from your experience. Maybe we could... No, I said again, I'm not here to help you build your brand. I'm here because I care about what cowboy culture actually meant, what it still means to people who live it. Margaret Hayes put her hand on my shoulder. Clint, can I show you something? We walked away from Dakota Steele and his crew, away from the crowd. to a quieter area of the stockyards. She led me to an older building, wood and history, with photos on the walls. "This is the museum," she said. "Fort Worth Stockyards history. Real cowboys, real ranches, real work. It's not fancy. Doesn't get many visitors. People would rather watch the rodeo show, buy the merchandise. But this is the real thing." I looked at the photographs. Men and women, weathered and strong, standing by horses and cattle, working the land, before it was performance, before it was aesthetic. "I've been funding the preservation of places like this," I told her, quietly, through a foundation. "Because I think it matters. I think we need to remember what things actually were, not just the Hollywood version or the Instagram version." She smiled. "I know. Your foundation is one of our major donors. Why do you think I recognized you so quickly? I've been trying to thank you for years, but you stay anonymous. I don't do it for thanks. I know. You do it because you understand something that people like Dakota Steele don't. That culture and values and history, they matter. They're not just content, they're who we are." We talked for a while about the challenges of keeping real ranching alive, about the next generation that wants the aesthetic but not the work, about how hard it is to compete with influencers selling a fantasy. "But there are still real cowboys," she said. "Still people doing the work, still ranches running the old way. We're not dead yet." "No," I agreed, "you're not." When I left the stockyards that evening, Dakota Steele was still there, still filming content, still performing his version of cowboy culture for his audience. The crowd loved him. He'd probably turned today's incident into a story about humility and learning, edited to make him look good. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's what most people want. The performance without the substance, the aesthetic without the values. But there are still people like Margaret Hayes, still working ranches, still living the life that cowboy culture came from, still embodying the values that matter: hard work, integrity, respect for the land and the animals. Those are the people I support. Those are the stories that matter. The West isn't dead. It's just harder to see now, buried under layers of performance and branding and social media, but it's still there, in the weathered hands of ranchers, in the early mornings and hard work, in the people who choose to live by a code, even when no one's watching, even when there's no engagement or followers or likes to validate them. That's what being a cowboy really means. And that's worth preserving, not for nostalgia, not for performance, but because we need people who understand that character matters more than image, that doing the right thing matters more than doing the popular thing, that who you are when no one's watching matters more than who you pretend to be for the cameras. That's the West I believe in, the one worth fighting for. And it's still alive if you know where to look.